Air Jamaica was never just an airline. It was a symbol of pride, a national project meant to put Jamaica on the map and show the world that a small island could fly high in the skies of international aviation. But in the end, pride alone could not keep it airborne. The collapse of Air Jamaica wasn't only about mismanagement or poor finances. The real turning point came when the International Monetary Fund stepped in and forced Jamaica to let go. By 2010, the government had no real choice. The country was drowning in debt, the airline was burning money every single year, and the IMF made it clear that if Jamaica wanted help, the subsidies had to end. What followed was not a clean exit, but a messy handover. The government had to sell off parts of the airline, keep some liabilities, and accept that another carrier would absorb the national flag. This is the story of what was sold, what Jamaica kept, and how Caribbean Airlines stepped into the space left behind. To understand the sale, we have to start with Jamaica's financial position in 2010. The country had been under economic strain for decades. By the late 2000s, debt had piled so high that servicing it consumed more than half of the government's budget. Growth was stagnant, unemployment was high, and international lenders were losing confidence. In that environment, the government returned to the IMF for a support program. The IMF program was strict, designed to stabilize the economy by forcing the government to cut spending and focus on fiscal discipline. Air Jamaica was an obvious target. For years, the airline had been losing hundreds of millions of dollars. Every year, the government had to find money to cover losses, money that could have gone to schools, hospitals, or paying down debt. The numbers were staggering. By some estimates, Air Jamaica had lost more than $1.5 billion over its lifetime, an impossible sum for a small country. The IMF was clear in its assessment. Jamaica could not afford to keep pouring public funds into a failing airline. If the government wanted IMF assistance, the subsidies had to stop. That meant Air Jamaica had to be sold. It was a condition of the bailout, not a voluntary choice. The public debate at the time was emotional. Many Jamaicans saw the airline as a symbol of independence, something more valuable than money, but the arithmetic could not be denied. With the economy in crisis, there was no justification for continuing to fund losses at that scale. For the IMF, it was simple. The airline had to go. For the Jamaican government, it was a bitter pill. So the government set out to sell. But selling an airline is not like selling a house or a car. The deal had to be structured carefully because no buyer would take on the full weight of Air Jamaica's debts. Caribbean Airlines, the state-owned carrier of Trinidad and Tobago, emerged as the only realistic buyer. The deal was designed to transfer assets, not liabilities. What exactly was sold? The most valuable parts of Air Jamaica were not the planes themselves, but the routes and slots. Air Jamaica had secured prime landing slots at major airports like Miami, New York, and Toronto. These were lucrative and difficult to obtain. Caribbean Airlines wanted those routes because they would give it greater access to the North American market. Alongside the routes, Caribbean Airlines acquired the right to use Air Jamaica's brand for a transitional period. This allowed passengers to adjust gradually to the change, even though the Air Jamaica identity would eventually be phased out. Caribbean Airlines also took over some of Air Jamaica's aircraft and a selection of staff, but the deal was careful to protect Caribbean Airlines from the worst of Air Jamaica's history. The debts stayed behind. Jamaica was left responsible for settling outstanding obligations before the transfer was finalized. For Caribbean Airlines, this was expansion. For Jamaica, it was damage control. Part of the arrangement included Jamaica retaining a 16% stake in Caribbean Airlines. On paper, this meant the country still had a connection to the regional aviation industry. In practice, the stake was symbolic. 16% was nowhere near enough to influence decisions, and Caribbean Airlines remained firmly controlled by Trinidad and Tobago. The Jamaican government held the stake as a gesture, a way to soften the blow of losing its airline completely, but there was no real power in it. Once the deal was completed, Caribbean Airlines began integrating Air Jamaica into its operations. The Air Jamaica branding was gradually removed. Planes were repainted, uniforms were changed, and ticketing systems were merged. For passengers, the transition was visible but not immediate. Over time, Air Jamaica disappeared as a distinct brand. Caribbean Airlines marketed itself as the new flag carrier of the region. At first, the merger gave Caribbean Airlines a stronger presence. It became the largest carrier in the Caribbean, with expanded routes and a larger fleet. But the underlying problems of the airline industry didn't go away. Aviation is a low-margin business, even in the best conditions. Caribbean Airlines soon faced the same difficulties that had plagued Air Jamaica: high fuel costs, stiff competition, and the challenge of serving small island economies where demand is limited. Despite absorbing Air Jamaica, Caribbean Airlines also required subsidies from its own government to stay afloat. The merger didn't create a profitable regional airline powerhouse. It created a bigger airline that still depended on state support. For Jamaica, however, the sale did achieve one immediate goal. The government was no longer responsible for Air Jamaica's annual losses. That freed up fiscal space at a time when every dollar counted. The country could redirect resources towards stabilizing the budget, meeting IMF conditions, and regaining credibility with lenders. In that sense, the sale was a relief, but it came with costs. Jamaica lost direct control of its national airline, and the stake in Caribbean Airlines offered no meaningful say in operations. Decisions about routes, pricing, and strategy were now made in Port of Spain, not Kingston. The loss was more than financial. Air Jamaica had carried national pride for decades. Its planes were cultural symbols, with branding that reflected the island's identity. Jamaicans abroad felt connected to home through the airline. Losing it felt like losing a piece of independence. But the government was left with little choice. Pride could not outweigh fiscal survival. The move was not voluntary. It was not about strategy or efficiency, it was about necessity. The IMF forced Jamaica to make the sale as part of its conditions for financial support. Without the IMF program, the country risked economic collapse. Air Jamaica was a casualty of that reality. Caribbean Airlines, for its part, gained assets, routes, and an expanded footprint. But it did not escape the structural problems of Caribbean aviation. Even with Air Jamaica absorbed, Caribbean Airlines struggled financially and relied on government subsidies. The story highlighted the difficulty of sustaining profitable airlines in small economies with limited markets. Looking back, the sale of Air Jamaica was a turning point. It marked the end of an era where Jamaica tried to maintain its own flag carrier at any cost. It also underscored the harsh trade-offs small states face when debt and economic crises leave them with little bargaining power. Jamaica gained breathing room, but lost control. The IMF program stabilized the economy, but at the cost of a cherished national symbol. The legacy of Air Jamaica still lingers. For many Jamaicans, it represents both pride and loss. Pride in what the airline once symbolized, and loss in how it had to end. The sale was not a decision made freely. It was dictated by external pressure, a reminder of how debt can erode sovereignty. Caribbean Airlines continues to operate, but Air Jamaica exists only in memory. The story of how Air Jamaica became part of Caribbean Airlines is not just about aviation. It's about economics, sovereignty, and survival. For Jamaica, it was a painful but unavoidable choice. For the region, it was another chapter in the ongoing struggle to balance national identity with financial reality. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We have plenty more content waiting for you, so check out our other videos right here on the screen. Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your feedback. And if you found this useful, feel free to share it with others who might enjoy it too. Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you in the next one.